Welcome to our channel. This video is for educational purposes only. The information presented is in no way intended to diagnose or prescribe. If you have specific health concern, please contact your healthcare professional. Hello. Hope everything is well. In this video, we'll talk about meditation and its benefits, so sit back and enjoy. Calm, self-assured, and resilient in the face of social stupidity and divisive discourse, the warrior mindset insists upon an evolving transition to higher states of differentiation. What benevolence of demeanor befalls individual abiding preoccupations? Can a person sustain the perseverance in the face of monumental anti-social diversities? Where can one find an open space of mental freedom of expression absent the destructive insurgencies of stupid, superficial and selfish people? It is a limited landscape at certain times of the day. By the fleecing of the flock, with knock of devolution, distractions mislead the essence of focus at times. Purposeful blindness of profound introspection and illuminated insight remains stifled for the sake of the mediocre, the mundane and the malicious. Stupidity abounds by menacing tentacles of interference with the alacrity of self-evolution to better versions than the original. Egoistically immature and cowardly intentions perpetrate the selfishness in the horrors of communal misguidance and misdeeds. Weary is the traveler who would be different. A calamity of continuous events, from academia to corporate empires and political establishments, collude to distract and dissuade dissenting perspectives. For the sake of immediate gratification in the solidification of status quo and conforming consensus, the many acquiesce to the illusions of mythic conjectures. Yet, in the small constabulary of valiant knights, for the reason of rationality and the persistence of growth and maturity, the brave few fight back. Nonetheless, the proselytes and gurus of stupidity continue to oppress as many as possible. But for some, focus may come through the hard work of introspection that leads closer and closer to the fine-tuning of crystal-clear perception. While an observer of communal and social events brings bias with him and her, the persistent diligence of discernment attempts serious observations that ensure an objective telescoping into the meeting point of realistic ideation. From the thought to the fabrication of the fantasy, to the desires, cravings and yearnings, self-reliance struggles to overcome the oppressions of the consensus in the status quo. Visionary centering on the locus of inner thoughts, demeanor and character, without malice, strives to instill the creative aspects of learning, the mature processes of critical thinking. Self-evolution guides toward the building individuality to create a better version than the original. Gaining a command of composure works to gain a wiser wealth of progress. On any given day, the battlefield crowds with calamity, noise and confusion. However, the warrior sorts through the human mess of fakes, frauds and fools. Yet, for many, stupidity serves immediate needs. Assorted and sordid spheres of distracting influential natures feast upon the strewn carcasses of good intention, as many witless souls stumble in maladaptive choices. In striving for relevance in the reality of the quest, or the non-quest of boated lethargy, creative endeavor to descend to those places of loud calamitous and tortuous turmoil. Entering the fray of multi-level human encounters, the bullying adversaries seek to intercede at every possible junction. Difficult lines of struggle define the separation between the abnormal, non-standard and unexpected. Yet, no one can adequately define normal versus abnormal. All is mostly opinion substantiated in the precarious unstable balance of subjective validation. For the arrogance of immature selfishness, many would waste a good life without sacrifice. Therefore, the conduct of self-reliance and good manners in the well-controlled behavior of warrior resists the detracting influences of consensus communal performances. For the brave ones, the warriors who keep the watch, an evolving process of courageous demeanor quiets the necessary composure of being in command of oneself. Character supersedes the appearance. Because appearances can be deceiving, attitude may decide its need for that which is less than savory. So, presence emphasizes the authority of those who dare to be different. By the way disposition is displayed, character becomes a matter of consciousness. Knightly privileges require warrior sacrifices. Neural grids must be disciplined to fortify imaginative networks of thought before action. And then, movement to the point of ascension. Divergence is deceived all too easily by the misdirected aims of what might be called the diabolus sexualis, or sexuality as a weapon against others. Essentially, at the very core of existence, the very being of self, is the personal nature of sexuality. Others will disagree. Such controversy does not matter in the great scheme of things. No one is required to believe anything. And people will believe whatever makes them feel good and does not threaten them. Regardless, there will always be those who want to be oppressors and prevail by any means over the consciousness of others. Because many accept myths and illusions. In the bravery of self-liberation, to do daring things, there is mature nobility. Within the soulful manifestations of self-willed pursuits, wisdom, understanding and courage bear the kinship. Soldiers of personal freedom accept the burden of heroic newer identities. Warriors, as such, must be prone to action to safeguard their independence. Getting to the action is matter of duty, discipline and devotion. Sitting still and doing nothing contributes little to the progression of personal timing, place and eventuality. As opposed to static fixations on stagnant foundations. Hushed, calmed down and silenced in steadfast control of feelings, quiet gathering of focused thoughts, the inhale of a deep breath of insight spurs the creativity. Innovative inclinations have all but died out across the swath of human interaction. As each stumbles to sidestep the onslaught of intellectual transformation and bodily reconfiguration, the species' death is summoned all too quickly. Moment to moment, sleep or action, to reside in the spheres of logic, reason and common sense are foreign lands for which most retreat. Transformation begs presence. Stupidity, all reality becomes a fiction of selfish inclination. Objective rational behavior settles the restless spirit, to channel psychodynamic energy to appropriate proactive outlets. Even if there is proclivity to the unconventional, or abnormal, or the rebellious, personal life forces are to be allowed freedom in the liberation of mind, body and spirit. Sexuality being the chief advocate and avenger of thinking and action stimulates the interference with the status quo. All forms of transitioning to change, whatever the lifestyle, or the individuation, must be tolerated to every degree probable, as slavery of any form cannot be eradicated. Otherwise, growth, development and maturation are stifled, as is so evident in the postmodern advent. Yet, these cannot always be tamed by the superfluous constraints of communal commands. The majority does not consistently know what's best, or even know what it thinks it knows. The cowardly ignorant, the smugly profane and the arrogantly weak, can never be validated by the warrior. As to the orthodoxy of dogma that fails the test of scientific authentication, such cannot be held sacred for any conception of an eternity. Not even for a generation that pretends to know the answers. Like everything, belief systems are designed to evolve, transcend and change. As such, the majority cannot be relied upon to secure rightness in all things. Neither can the minority voices, testing the overindulgence of the masses, given to devolving levels of stupidity by intentional ignorance, should not receive the slightest credibility. For the warrior, enlightened balance holds the grip of harmony with fragile fingers. Slippery is the elusive hopefulness to promote the general welfare, for the greater, for which there is no guarantee of private personal security. To ensure domestic tranquility is to walk a tense tightrope of travel that speaks unkindly of human efforts to change. Devolution unfolds. At all times, the warrior strives to insist upon an individual commitment, in a personal quest that values questions, when answers remain an illusion. He or she takes chances, overcomes risks and takes the wins and losses as they come. Nothing's a sure thing anyway. There's too much competition and often monopolistic intervention. There will always be opposition. Consistently, most will project their dysfunctions by way of their selfishness and find ways to inflict oppression on others. Unevolving, many pretend but fail to defend that which is honorable and rightly dividing the truth from the fiction. Masses will provoke the dishonor of being deceptive, deviant and demonic in defense of or complicity with a variety of tyrannies. Cowardly acts of such betrayers, who fail to self-evolve, eventually hasten the wrath of nature's corrective actions. Their selfishness in the ignorance of their arrogance invites retribution. Those who are strong, the warriors of many types, for the persistence of strength in mind, body and spirit, will always accept the challenge of those dangers. The ones who are warriors, the avengers, will do an avenging in necessary exercises of free will. In the trilogy, spiritual, psychic and physical aspects, the few valiant ones work hard to transform. The war within, and the many battles in external form, to oppose totalitarian imposition of one will over another, of necessity, demands resistance. To stand up, speak out and fight back finds many venues that challenge willful intervention. Nonetheless, the credibility of individuality is in the essence of personal transformation to become a better version than the original. For which, psychic configurations carry cryptic messages, asleep or awake to be appreciated. Regardless, the journey waits for the acceptance of consciousness to bear witness to its unfolding nature, whether from the darkness of inner recesses to the exposition of thoughtful action. During those dark meditative moments such as sleep along the barren landscapes of mind, personalities at work as one is many, making sense of a timeless journey. Making the transition from the physical to psychic, strenuous energies exhaust the senses. Upon entry into the neural networks, the sensual and the salacious impulses to creativity ought not be ignored but fully explored. Yet, for the fear of a basic self, immature and unevolving, the frightening prospects of self-liberation scare away the exploration to higher possibilities. Silly, foolish and childlike, the maturity fails to unfold and weakness takes hold. From its conduit of mental projection, the picture screen plays successive scenarios, for which decisions require action. Watching with attendant care, the warrior studies what he or she sees in the stories hidden in those psychic archives. For him or her, projections unravel the mystery over time and commitment to doing brave things. Images flash in streams of blue-gray mists, sometimes sepia and reddish hints, as memories and problem-solving tasks display their influential whispers. Murmurs and sighs offer the low voices of intuitive undertones. The night takes heed of cautions within the thoughts and applies necessary deductive reasoning. As the surrounding materiality of status quo conventionality opposes wiser eccentricity, the silence is disturbed by the whining cries of self-indulgent infantile emotions. To be still in the meadows of intuitive thoughts, for the challenges of higher wonders, the patience to be at peace contends with the folly of many. Alert, insightful and determined, the warrior is attentive to the watchfulness of threatening clues. Crossing through these tunnels, breathless formations clutch the heartbeat of anxious decisions. Whatever the choices must be made and resolve maintained in steadfast devotion to inner awakening. Insight is foresight, control and discipline of passion. To overwhelm the egoistic inclinations, the warrior persists to prevail, dedicated not to fail. Between night and day, the psychic connectivity is constant, bridging the expanse from unconscious to conscious. Being afraid of these things, the places and the entities, human or otherwise, the inner nakedness of selflessness reveals itself in the exposure of the true nature. Most are too afraid of their freedom. Liberation into profound self-awareness scares most people. They wear masks and use deception in clever and conning ways. Many are dangerous and trust is superficial. Only the brave go to those places or connect with those entities. Names called authenticity and credibility, bare essence of uninhibited openness threatens those devolving to unimaginative states of self-destruction. To be cruel, for want of validation, the dangerous ones will use intimidation, which instead change stifles the stillness and muffles the essence to listen. Not for very long can we hide from ourselves. Each must be exposed in the true nakedness of individuality. Over the trails and trials of a lifetime, the urgings persist. Meanwhile, individuation in particular proclivities make insistent demands for necessary liberation. The ascension to freedom entails involvement of oneself in the activities of life and most of all the passion for creativity. Decisiveness to action clangs the cymbals of a sensory seduction. The sounds pull us closer to the edge. Cacophonies of voices speak back to us. Yet, the disharmony and dissonance distracts and detracts from waking the need to ensure proper balance to seek higher realms. Within, male and female essences strive inside for definition and exhibition, to link the duality into greater reality. For such, the making of rationality and the common sense are scarce. To explore such commodity frightens many to the safe mediocrity of hiding. Individuality becomes seen not as a duality, or a multiplicity, but a conformity of narrow and shallow proportions that hasten extinction. The variety of likeness, of which the valiant knight must test each day, grapples with the necessity to change and transcend. In some perspectives, all of this evolves around the struggles between competing forces of life and death. Eventually, one wins over the other no matter what else comes or goes. To master issues of physical interaction with the metaphysical nature of mental energies, self-evolve in ascended actualized states runs the course of a lifespan. The vast majority will never get there. From within the maze of thoughts, the potency of cerebral instigations contends with the externality of devious and sinister designs that dissuade to the mystical and mysterious trickery of others. Once again, the specters of the stupid, the inept and the unwise, poke and provoke their selfish dysfunctions and desires upon the few. For the brave, the rebels of resistance, learned in more disciplined pursuits, force and pull of internal mechanisms, chase neural passages of imagination, to speak the complex language of well-ordered transformation. In choosing that which is right or wrong, the choices are obvious, yet the self-indulgence is potent. So much time is wasted on immature youthful arrogant frivolities in the hunger for the satiation of self-gratification, with disregard for the interests of others. Most don't always see the necessity of seizing each moment to insist upon equity and justice. Instead, the majority will seek to find diversions to non-essential tasks, worries over unneeded materiality, or greed of acquisition, as well as the endless list of egotistical benefits. Grand illusions painted in the glorious portraits of superficial reactivity, brushed with sweeps of lavish emotionalism, portray the absence of intellectual authenticity. Truthfulness of reality decays to fictions over facts. The verity of proof, in proving things to be true, given the actuality of evidence, requires the strength of secure insight by intense introspection. Fair dealing, the greater good, the value of duty and discipline, and even-handed rational responses suggest adherence to a certain code of conduct. Ethical codes are precepts that depend on the free will of the adherent. While such a notion, the freedom of choice, regardless of history, or any other excuse, is often orphaned in the mainstream. No matter the outcry of the whiners, the foolish, and the ignorant, choice knows a depth of psychic dimensions to which many will never descend. Morality follows closely. Crossing those boundaries of beliefs demands bravery. Codes of conduct are purposeful guidelines for the rules of behavior. As guides, they offer the opportunity for flexibility. Since absolutes are so difficult to justify, many easily give lip service to such philosophical notions. Too often, those who swear allegiance to one code of another, fail to live by them. But, validity resides in the mind of the individual to decide for himself or herself. The rightfulness of our ways depends on the rationality of logical objectives to anticipate, recognize and appraise. Thoughtful intense contemplation concerns the purposeful mindset for changing oneself regardless of what others do, say and dissuade. By neither materiality to be sought nor validation to be valued, one insists upon personal transformation. The selfish self is cast aside. A sacrifice, an atonement, an offering to give up smaller focus for the greater effect. For this, being alone in solitude does not equate with any semblance of loneliness. To be alone and quiet is a solemn refuge of blissful unfolding in the discovery of higher realms. It takes courage to be different. Regardless, vigilance is essential as enemies are many for diverse reasons of enmity. Anticipate that the betrayers will sneak up and use all manner of deception for the greater enhancement of themselves. Close in when you least expect it, they will look for opportunities to gain an advantage. They'll use whatever is available to breach the moat of your thoughts. Evil knows the weak links and the soft points. For all their efforts, everyone has the same finality. Death waits the final gasp of consequences sown. Overall, nothing matters in the darkness. Command of oneself is at once, and forever, the practice of the trained mind, given the vast reaches of creativity, or at least the potential, is to stir the motivation to achieve the journey. The quest transitions the individuality by pain and suffering to an aspiration for greater individuality. Mistakes, failures and intentional shortcomings are made in many manifestations of self-exploration. Nonetheless, the quest is essential. Transformation does not visit the inept, the ignorant or the slothful. Becoming an enhanced version of the original self does not come easily. A lifelong commitment, in spite of the dangers, hard work demands vigilance. Devotion to continuous introspection embraces the careful building upon experiences, strengths and weaknesses, conflict and compromise, insults and applause, and the host of winning and losing over a lifetime. Failure, in split seconds of conflict, resonates a burning sensation and ought to ignite the controversy of self-analysis. Composure to face the letdown soothes the painful reflection upon which transformation is built. No matter what, staying in control is the essence of coming face to face with one's demons. The darkness pulls us to our base starkness. Compounding the composure of resolute detachment, how well do we differentiate from those who do us ill? The confrontation with the many faces of arrogance never ceases, as stupidity knows no boundaries in any sphere of interaction. Sometimes, distracted in the mists of mental motions, reception of insight hangs in the shadows waiting for an invitation. Yet, those who violate personal space and boundaries, as well as perpetuating other invasive actions, lurk near the fringe of selfish advantage waiting for an opportunity to rob the moment. For most, the cowardice of their indecision about who they are, threaten and otherwise endanger others. Malevolence in many forms of evil can result when ignorance, more pointedly, stupidity, rise above a more righteous calling. Slothful, gluttonous, smugly self-righteous, arrogantly ignorant, intentional maladies of thoughtlessness, replace the authenticity of rational validity. Failing to quiet the essence of demeanor, the manner and bearing of noble conduct, because self-focus is selfish in a most debasing of consequences. For the fearful, a reflection often fancies its own deception, as many deceive the very essence of their reality. Weakness, in the spineless whining and sniveling of cowardly reactivity, encourages the amative proclivity of dishonest behaviors. From whimpering angst, perpetuated endlessly in postmodern entertainment, to worrisome selfishness in gluttonous materiality, cowering bellows welcome the subservience of voluntary enslavement. Not so for warrior. He or she understands the call of duty for the discipline of transformation. A warrior appreciates that all is a centrality of choice, and freedom of willfulness that aligns against the evils of the negativity of adverse reinforcement. For the valiant ones, communal victimization is self-inflicted. To fight back and carry on the resistance is the act of a rebel who challenges the oppressiveness of herded consensus in senseless conventionality, of which few partake in the feast of differentiation for self-evolution. For the warrior mindset, anticipation is constant for the next move by others, especially those in opposition. Vigilance is vital. Thus, to be ready, command of quiet composure, a resolute determination to be steadfast yet balanced, requires extraordinary fitness of liberated thinking processes. To be free, and to be a mature self-actualized adult, calls upon exceptional strength and fortitude. Being different is an act of bravery. For the warrior, every day is a relentless trek to be self-reliant and steadfast in his or her tenacity to prevail against the odds. Such thinking does not embrace excuses for shortcomings, and shuns any obstacle that remotely appears bogus. It is the whisper in the darkness, from the shadows of willful inner reaches, where echoes are heard in the quiet composure of resolute demeanor. While stupidity surrounds the setting, valor summons the discipline of composed character. At the same time, attentiveness reminds of the necessity to be alert and prepared. Fear makes folly of composure at the wrong time and the wrong place. So, rather than falter and wallow in the splash of emotion, reason must bring back the focus. To know and to act with immanent comprehension of motive and intention is of the utmost necessity. Hesitation breeds the discontent of defeat, and submission to detractors invites less than honorable behaviors. In a devolving civilization with global consequences, with a less than heroic ideal of noble service, selfless devotion, and rigorous independence, there is potentially little to be salvaged in the world external to individuality. While some would argue things are getting better, counter-arguments would offer a more dismal depiction of the world. For instance, a few point to the regressive aspects of a sissy society, with few exceptions and noble attempts to bring about change. More profound degradations signal an eventual extinction. With a mainstream of the arrogantly foolish, the smugly ignorant and the gluttonously slothful, the remaining important battles are within the individual. According to some, the American mainstream of social interactivity is exemplified by an obese, weak, irresponsible, whining and narcissistic culture. For warriors, the challenge of transformation in part is operating in such an environment of infantile weaklings. Acting stupidly to satiate immediate gratification for the sake of selfish motivations affects everyone in a variety of ways. In the rise of seasoned and wiser rebelliousness, a few proclaim the advent of the sissy nation, the devolving status of wimpy culture, in which whining, sniveling and malcontented cowardice become the trendy primal scream. With a communal interactivity of entitled immediacy of gratification, the fat, and the weak, the stupid and conceitedly infantile, hasten a dystopic onset. With whiny herded fatalism, the fear of self-evolution through the pain and suffering, the successes and failures of life, the essentiality of learning and growing wiser, many cower and shrivel in confrontation with reality. By contrast, warriors fight on, never yielding to the foolishness. For the warrior class, the nobility of responsible action in personal differentiation is a ruthless and relentless quest. Valiant ones cannot act under the constraints and consensus of shallow emotional imaginings of groupthink. The certainty of maintaining individual liberation in efficiently rational ways is often adversely confronted by the cowardice of total toleration. Such is the excessive emotional reactivity and the pretentious kindness of believing the inherent goodness of all persons. It is a false sense of security and approaches the dubious boundaries of a deterministic perception of human behavior. Such is nearly treasonous. For the truth of a matter, a warrior searches the relevance in the evidentiary necessity that cannot be subverted by personal preference, prejudice or particular proclivity for the satiation of subjective validation. In the demonic darkness of human nature, anything is possible, as deception knows no limitations. In the process, we'll get fooled into believing the diversity of conceptions relative to moral uprightness. As such, demeanor quiets command of composure. That ends our video for this time. Watch our other videos about general health and overall wellness. Please like, follow, subscribe, and click the notification button on our channel for our other videos. Stay safe and see you again soon.